Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Advancement Center and, of course, the world of magic and miracles and the continued reading of The Magic of Life, Volume 2, The Next Step by Robert Young. And we continue with Chapter 14. John's voice was clear as he spoke to Henry. The events of the past few days had taken John to where he could work on the final development of a plan that had been given to him along with the particle transfer of components for the upgrade of the Michael. This fishing vessel would become a high-speed personal mover from Norwood to any part of the world once the merger with the Pacific Line was complete and the board of directors recognized that Norwood had complete control. The letter must be delivered before the deadline, said John. Simon Phillips knows what will be at stake, replied Henry. His lawyers, who are looking after the change of equity in the Olson Plaza network, are preparing it now. They have an office adjacent to the Pacific Line and can sign as our representatives. Henry found himself leaning forward to make sure his voice was picked up clearly by the hand-free telephone that was prominent in the middle of the boardroom table. Elizabeth and Michael Wells sat in their normal positions and took on the look of the town officials that they were. Elizabeth opened her mouth to speak, but Michael was too quick, and she withdrew and listened. There's nothing at stake or at risk. It is all under control, stated Michael. Alfred Hartley works for us and is under contract for 2 more years. Elizabeth took over the conversation and placed her stamp of authority where it was needed. The town council has appointed Alfred Hartley as their representative for the merger with Voltage Docking and has offered the settlement of all bonuses on the completion of the merger rather than at the end of his contract. Everything went silent. This was new and not part of what John had considered. John, this is Mary. I just got off the phone with Dad. He has agreed to work with me to settle your side of the merger and protect everything you do from the eyes of the directors. John relaxed and looked up from the desk. To his surprise, there was Heinrich standing outside his office, talking to Tom Jacobs and Bill Summers. Hold on a moment. I just saw Heinrich. I will see if I can catch him. The sounds of movements echoed through Henry's loud speaking phone, and you could see everyone focused on what was happening. The door suddenly opened, and Simon Phillips entered, waving a typed letter in front of him. The silence caught him off guard, and he stopped and looked straight at Henry. It's okay, Simon. What have you got? Henry blurted in his normally condescending manner. Mary's eyes caught Henry immediately and extracted him from his habitual mode of authority. I'm so sorry, Simon. Please sit down. John has just gone to see if he can get Heinrich to join us. Henry offered immediately. Simon sat as Henry caught the special smile of approval from Mary. We have the letter. It will be delivered as soon as you all approve, announced Simon. Michael reached across the table and took the letter from Simon. He read carefully and then read it again. Beautifully done, offered Michael. I would go for a deal like that myself. The letter went around the room, and as soon as John and Heinrich became available on the phone, Mary read the details to them. Everyone was in agreement, and Simon was given approval to have the letter delivered. All you have to do now, Heinrich, Michael said suddenly, is inspect the assets and let us know if anything is missing. Heinrich laughed and said, Roger, Michael. They are getting ready to move the ship to the international terminal. I must go. We'll talk to you all later. Bye. As each person signed off or said goodbye, there was a sense of satisfaction generated amongst the new and somewhat powerful group that had never existed before that moment. Chapter 15. Marjorie was quite different to what Suzanne expected. Her features were sharp, but sparkly, and she was much smaller than her husband, Tom. It had taken some time for them to have breakfast and chat about the proposal for the day, and now they were on the bus heading for the center of town. Tom and Bill seemed to connect immediately and were so engrossed in their world of ships and boats that they couldn't wait to get underway with their tour of the shipyard. The girls laughed when they saw Tom and Bill get up from the table carrying what was left of their breakfast and finishing off what was left of their coffee. They looked like identical twins with the same actions and the same look of enthusiasm as they waved goodbye and headed towards the walkway that led to the shipyard. Marjorie seemed to know exactly what Suzanne needed to know and was always one step ahead with detail that covered the children's education as well as Suzanne's. It wasn't long before Suzanne decided that Marjorie was her type of person and that she would like to know more about her. "How long have you worked for the shipyard?" Suzanne asked as the bus rounded the corner and lined up for the bus stop. "This is our stop," interjected Marjorie. "Remember to hold on until the bus stops," she instructed the children. The bus came to a jerky stop, and before the children could move, Marjorie jumped up and took Martha from Suzanne. "Hold Mummy's hand and be careful of the step," Marjorie continued. "I don't really work for the shipyard. I come with the office. Hold on tight, Jamie. Tom and I run the office and the design section. It is called Jacob's Design. Stay close and follow me. I will get us out of this crowd." The crowd seemed to push in around them for a moment, but as Marjorie's tiny frame started to move, the crowd parted and made way for all of them. "How did you do that?" Suzanne exclaimed. "I thought we were about to be crushed." "It's not how big you are, it's how determined you are that no one will stand in your way," Marjorie replied quickly. "All our companies and businesses work for the shipyard. We are free agents for the biggest part. Follow me, and we will get a coffee. This is your first chance to buy something." Suzanne had never been with someone who could multitask the way she could, and to experience Marjorie's competence was like a breath of fresh air. "You have your money. I will have a cappuccino and a blueberry muffin," Marjorie said quickly as she took Samuel's hand and led the children to a table. For a split second, Suzanne froze, and then something happened. Her complete outlook changed. She turned quickly, walked to the counter, and placed an order for her, Marjorie, and the children. The till rang, and the price appeared in front of her. Without hesitation, she paid and waited for the change. The next step she remembered clearly, and she eagerly took the number for the table and checked her change. As Suzanne approached the table, she could not hold back her short squeal of excitement. To her surprise, no one but Marjorie and the children even took any notice. "I did it. Look, number 16. They said they would call us when it was ready." Suzanne placed the number on the table and sat down with such confidence that Marjorie could not help stop noticing. "What happened, Suzanne?" Marjorie asked. Suzanne began to laugh and talk at the same time. "You know, it may sound funny, but it was so easy that I am sure I have done it a million times before. Everything is suddenly so familiar." "Oh, great. It looks like everything is happening at once. Your heritage line is starting to support your reality. You will soon know exactly what to do about everything in this dimension." 16, number 16. The announcement came as a shock, but Suzanne quickly jumped to attention and headed off to complete her task. As she placed the tray on the table, she began to talk. "The orange juice is yours, Jamie. Chocolate milk for Samuel, strawberry for Martha. There's an extra blueberry muffin if anyone wants one. Cappuccino for you and tea for me. You can all share the chips. That is it. Now, Marjorie, tell me more." "John saw what was happening the moment you asked to go shopping. He would have liked to talk to Heinrich about it, but it seemed to take its own course. He and I have been destined to work with the heritage line, particularly when it is starting to show itself in key people who have been placed in strategic positions to interface with the physical world. You are one of those key people." Suzanne looked at Marjorie with amazement as one of the pictures in the salamander suite appeared somewhere in her vision. Everyone she had seen since she boarded the Pacific Rose appeared in the picture as random characters going somewhere. But there in the middle were John and Marjorie directing the traffic. It was a very busy affair, but it explained Marjorie's position perfectly. Marjorie sipped on her cappuccino, then looked up slowly as if to say, "Does that explain it for you?" But never said a word. Suzanne quickly replied, "Thank you," and not another word was said. There was so much to be done. Both Marjorie and Suzanne could see that their time was limited, but with the understanding that it just revealed itself seemed to relieve the situation considerably. Suzanne sat back and looked around at all the people. There seemed to be an urgency that had not shown itself before. Every person had a purpose, and the flow of the bodies was relentless. No one hesitated or gave way to the flow. It seemed to continue with no intention of ever stopping. The faces seemed to be familiar, and occasionally there was a glint of recognition from a passing stranger. It was as if she had been taken into another existence in another time. "Are you ready, Mummy?" said Jamie. "Marjorie wants to go to the bank." Suzanne jumped a little as she returned to the focus of the cafe table. She looked at Marjorie just in time to detect a slight shrug and a smile that indicated that she had not said a word. "What was that, Jamie?" she replied. "It is time for you to go to the bank with Marjorie. She has been waiting for you." Marjorie smiled and gave an indication of agreement that would not have been detected by the regular person. Jamie jumped up and took Suzanne's hand. "I can show you the way," she offered quickly. Marjorie stood and waited for Suzanne's response. "Okay, Jamie, show us the way." "Do you think it will take long?" said Suzanne. Jamie took Samuel's hand. "Come on, Samuel, you know where to go. It will take about 6 minutes. We have been there before." Samuel responded quickly and started to pull at Jamie's hand with enthusiasm as he moved towards the crowded alleyway. Marjorie stepped in quickly and stopped all progress. "Hold on, everyone. You little ones will have to go in the 2 strollers, and Jamie, you will have to let one of us carry you until we get out of the crowd." Her tone was strong but gentle, and everyone stopped and waited for her to remove the 2 portable strollers from her backpack. "You can lead us, Jamie, but you cannot go into that crowd without being carried," she continued. Marjorie understood what was happening to Jamie and Samuel, but they had to remember that they were still children and were not capable of handling the physical world in the way that they had in the timeline that they could remember. She looked at Suzanne and registered a sternness that opened Suzanne's eyes further than normal. This was a factor that had to be considered, and Suzanne had looked at it but not registered its significance. "The movement of a city will not stop for anyone," Marjorie continued, "and like entering a river, all precautions must be taken to ensure everyone's safety." A shiver ran up Suzanne's spine, and she immediately sat and held Jamie. Marjorie sat beside her and waited for the emotion to settle. "This is how it is in this world, and you will have to consider everything before you move forward," Marjorie added. Suzanne felt something that had never entered her life before. Her emotions were not pure, and there was a sense of reaction that she had never, ever experienced. Her head spun, and she looked for assistance. Jamie squeezed her hand, and a picture of Carmel Roberts came immediately to Suzanne. Every part of her being was being compromised, and she had no idea what it was about. Carmel's vision intensified, and suddenly her voice burst through the confusion. "Suzanne, it's Carmel. Focus." Carmel's voice was calm and firm, and she took a hold of the situation. "Follow Jamie and ignore the emotions that come from a world that is foreign to you." Suzanne relaxed and was about to respond to Carmel when Marjorie insisted on being heard. "Are you okay?" she asked. "We can leave this to another time. I know this is an emotional experience for you." Suzanne was about to explode when Carmel interjected. Take Simeon with you and do as you wish. This is your adventure, and Marjorie will follow your lead. Suzanne stood quickly and put Martha in a stroller. Marjorie smiled and proceeded to put Samuel in the second stroller. Before Marjorie could make a comment, Jamie said, Okay, follow me, and raced off towards the crowd. Suzanne smiled and followed as if she had expected Jamie's move. Marjorie had no option but to follow and was totally amazed when the crowd parted and made room for their party, led by this enthusiastic little girl. The doors to the bank opened automatically as Jamie put both hands up to push with all her might. The look of surprise on her face made Suzanne laugh as she followed close behind and almost ran into the attendant who was standing just inside the door. Can I help you, ma'am? He said with a pleasant smile. I would like to open an account, Suzanne exclaimed without thought. Follow me, and I will have a manager talk to you shortly. Marjorie stopped and attempted to get Suzanne's attention, but before she could say a word, Jamie and Suzanne were on their way without even looking in her direction. The crowd in the bank seemed to move out of the way as they headed towards the business area where Marjorie had promised Heinrich not to take Suzanne on the first visit. There was no doubt in her mind that she could redirect Suzanne when the attendant left them alone. Mr. Jameson, said the attendant with a wave of his hand, I have some special guests who would like to open an account. I can tell from their accent that they need to talk to you. Do you have a moment? Stan Jameson turned with a welcoming smile on his face and looked directly at Jamie. So, young lady, what can I do for you? Jamie stepped forward quickly. Mummy would like to open an account, she said quickly. Both Suzanne and Marjorie laughed, and all tension disappeared into the natural joy of the moment. My name is Stan Jameson. You can call me Stan, he said as he held out his hand to Jamie. Jamie reached up and shook Stan's hand. I am Jamie Montgomery. You can call me Jamie, she replied. Okay, Jamie, bring your family into my office, Stan replied as he turned and walked towards a large door with gold writing. Jamie turned and took Suzanne's hand to lead her into the office. Her face was calm and totally engrossed in the role she was playing as the head of the family. Please sit down, said Stan as he looked into Suzanne's eyes. Have we met before? I believe so. I am Suzanne, Jamie's mother, said Suzanne, but I can't remember where we met. Hello, Marjorie, Stan continued. Are these lovely people part of your organization? Marjorie smiled and replied cautiously. It's a long story, Stan, but you will remember that there was a silent partner in the shipyard at Olson Plaza. Well, if you check this lady's signature, you may be surprised at the results. Stan's eyebrows lifted. A little mystery. Well, then let us not delay. You wish to open an account, Suzanne? Yes, I need an account to use while I am on the mainland, Suzanne replied quickly. But I'm not sure how all this works. Do you have 3 forms of identification with you? Stan asked calmly. Suzanne looked at Marjorie with a vacant smile. Stan, this is a special situation, exclaimed Marjorie. Suzanne has had accounts here before, but has been away for a while. I think you may have to open our safety deposit box to reveal Suzanne's identity. Marjorie handed the key to Stan. As Suzanne looked on with her mouth open, Stan moved in his seat and looked straight at Suzanne as he took the key from Marjorie. Interesting, he said slowly. Can you tell me more? This is new for Suzanne and a long time ago for me, continued Marjorie. But there was a time when Suzanne lived here, lived with her grandmother, and several accounts were opened for Suzanne. All the details are in the safety deposit box. Suzanne almost exploded again and had to calm herself with a deep breath. Why didn't you tell me? She said with deep control. You will understand when we open the box, Marjorie replied as she reeled at the hidden power of Suzanne. Stan stood quickly and signaled through the glass to an assistant. He had no intention of leaving at this point. "Ladies, please," Stan exclaimed as the pressure built between Suzanne and Marjorie. The office door opened quickly. "Joseph, come in," invited Stan with a smile as he signed the safety deposit box recovery authority. "We need box 701 urgently, and we will need you to witness the opening." Everyone relaxed as Joseph smiled, as took the authority from Stan, then turned and left the room without a word. "Joseph is my son. He works here during college break. I will introduce him when he returns. Now let us continue with the paperwork." The atmosphere in the room changed, and Suzanne felt herself being engulfed by the presence of Simeon. Everything disappeared, and there in front of her was the shimmering shape of Simeon. She tried to shake herself back to the reality of Marjorie, Stan, and the children, but Simeon's presence grew stronger until nothing else existed. He smiled and proceeded to talk with that familiar warmth and consideration. "You are experiencing your first competitive influence of the lower vibration of the physical world. This is not present in your normal environment and will take a little time for you to recognize that it is not part of your world. You know that you come from another dimension, and you are about to experience the unique influence of your heritage. All knowledge of your hidden competitive interaction will now disappear from everyone, and you will return to the familiar field of your own dimension." Suzanne felt a sudden impulse, and a smile came to her face as the events of the past day flashed before her. Everything had been reformatted, and all sense of discomfort had been removed from every scene. A knock on the door snapped Suzanne back to the office, and the big beaming face of Joseph welcomed her as the door swung open. As Joseph placed the box on Stan's desk, Suzanne noticed his excitement and was surprised when Stan failed to introduce him. "Thank you for allowing me to see the opening of the box, Suzanne. This is really exciting," said Joseph. Suzanne smiled and looked around at everyone. She had obviously missed something in the playback. Stan Jameson took on his role as bank manager and presented the safety deposit box and key to Suzanne. Everyone went quiet except for Jamie. "Can I open it, Mummy?" she exclaimed quickly. "Not this time, Jamie," replied Stan in his official voice. "Mommy has to open the box herself." All eyes turned to Suzanne as she inserted the key into the lock and turned it. The small click of the tumbler seemed to fill the room, and Suzanne hesitated for a moment as she felt a tingle in her hand that seemed to stop her movement. The box was ready to be opened, but something seemed to be incomplete. Suzanne returned the key to its normal position and removed it from the lock. The latch immediately released, and the lid popped up to indicate that it was ready to open. Stan frowned. He had never seen a safety deposit box open that way. Suzanne lifted the lid, and a secondary box that was sitting on top of many papers and pictures started to glow with the most unusual blue shimmer. Without hesitation, Suzanne removed the glowing box and placed it on the table in front of Stan. "I remember this box. See if you can open it, Stan," she said with excitement. Stan smiled and reached for the box. The shimmer immediately disappeared, and there seemed to be no way of opening the box. No matter who attempted to open it, there wasn't any way that they could. The box would glow when it was on the desk or when Suzanne touched it, but not when any other person came near. Suzanne laughed as everyone tried his or her skills, and finally she reached over and lifted the lid. The amber stone that stood out as if it was alive, and the light from the window captured its beauty for everyone to see. Suzanne's eyes welled up, and the tears began to flow. Something had touched a special place in her, and the memories that she thought were a dream came flooding into her reality. It's all true. I was here before. This is my birthstone that my grandmother kept for me. She used her magic to seal the box so I could play with it and not lose it. You watch. Suzanne lifted the stone out of the box and handed it to Marjorie. While I am here watching, everything is normal. If I walk away to where I can't see, you watch what happens. Suzanne walked to the other side of the room and faced the wall. The jewelry box snapped shut, and the stone suddenly disappeared from Marjorie's hand. Marjorie let out a short scream of shock. What happened? She exclaimed. Suzanne walked over to the jewelry box, and it started to glow. She slowly opened the lid, and there was the stone with its magnificent presence, just as it had been the first time when it was opened. It does more, but I can't wait to see what else is in the safety deposit box. Suzanne removed the documents from the box and started to inspect them sequentially, taking care to maintain the order and not disturb the energy that she felt around each item. Within moments, she was in another world, experiencing a life that she had forgotten. All the pictures were real and were at the same time when she remembered being on the island. Nothing made sense, but what she thought was a dream was actually real. The familiar picture of Salamander pulled Suzanne back to the surface, and she remembered how she could enter the Salamander suite and prove everything once and for all. Let me see, she said thoughtfully as she fingered through the paperwork. These two accounts should give you my history. This birth certificate will prove I am a citizen, and these three references from the past bank managers will vouch for my character. I also have the original will of Salamander Guthridge that shows I am the sole recipient of all her assets. Is there anything else you need? Stan Jameson turned into the serious and professional bank manager as he inspected the paperwork and typed at his computer terminal. All we will need is your signature and the signature of an independent witness, and you will become a real person in our banking system. It looks like all the paperwork has been waiting for you. The printer made a whirring sound, and 4 official-looking documents appeared in its out tray. If you and Joseph would sign here and here on these documents, I will personally copy your originals, and we can put everything in order. Suzanne quickly read and signed the documents as if she had done it a million times before. Stan took the signed documents and the originals from the safety deposit box to the annex at the back corner of his office and began the copying process. He then handed copies of the 4 documents to a clerk on the other side of a slotted window. You have a full statement of your assets in about 5 minutes and a checkbook and cards for all your accounts. The copier stopped and Stan immediately checked the copies against the originals before inserting the copies in a printed envelope and passing them through the same window. Here are your originals in the exact order you handed them to me, he said as he sat down. I assume you wish to return everything to the safety deposit box for safekeeping. Suzanne nodded and returned the paperwork to the box in the order she remembered. As she reached for the jewelry box, it lit up and opened as if to say something more. Suzanne looked intently at the stone, and then the lid closed and the light went dim. The safety deposit box locked easily, and the key was returned to Marjorie for safekeeping. The checkbook and cards arrived within 5 minutes, and the small party departed the bank with a new feeling of satisfaction and security. And that ends chapter 15. Thank you for joining me and listening to The Magic of Life, Volume 2, The Next Step by Robert Young. And when we return, we'll be continuing with chapter 16. Until then, I wish you a perfect life, perfect health, and a magic future. Thank you.